Fire asked some questions about personal finance. I don't have a ton I want to say about it, but I have some other things to say. You can read mainstream books on personal finance, and read Reddit, and it's okay. You can find decent advice. I'm not driven by money. I've never been, and I don't think you should be. In our society, making a lot of money does not correspond well with productive achievement. The attitude you find to money in Atlas Shrugged has some reasonable points to it, but it is not very applicable in our world today. Most rich people did not become rich by doing something very productive or valuable. I'm, in short, anti-consumerism. I think people buy a lot of junk that clutters up their home, and then they throw too much away and generate too much trash, and that whole thing is bad, and they shouldn't be wasting their money like that. And then a bunch of businessmen spend their time supporting that bad lifestyle, or not just supporting, but frequently encouraging it, trying to cause it, purchasing propaganda ads to get people to do it, trying to manipulate people into doing more of it than they want to, rather than helping people have better lives. Or if not helping people have better lives directly, at least only selling things that are actually good. Just don't participate in the bad things. In Atlas Shrugged, Lillian Reardon said she didn't care about money, but later, when she faces the possibility of actual poverty and having to worry about paying for groceries and rent, it turns out she does care about money. When I say I'm not driven by money, I'm not pretending that I don't care about money at all. Having enough money to pay your rent and buy groceries without being stressed about it is really nice. That is a good thing. That's valuable. It makes your life better. Being poor is bad. I don't mean it makes you a bad person. It's just a hassle. It's worse for you. But I don't think being rich is significantly better than being middle class. If you have an average income, you can buy mass-produced and mass-available things. So mass-produced is like they make in a factory really efficiently, they churn out tons of them, so it is affordable to people with below average incomes. And mass-available is not made in a factory, but it is available to many, many, many people. An example would be medical services. When you see a doctor, he gives you individual personal attention. That's not mass-produced like a factory with an assembly line, but it is mass-available. So I think that the things rich people can buy that the masses cannot are not very good. Apple does not make better computers for rich people. Coca-Cola does not make better drinks for rich people. I think Coke is bad, by the way. But even if Coke were good, rich people don't get a better version. IKEA and Costco and Craigslist for used furniture sell perfectly good furniture. You don't need to spend $5,000 on a desk like some rich people do. That will not make your life better. Even if you have the $5,000, I would not recommend buying that desk. Wanting your stuff to look nice and impress people is one of the main reasons for spending $5,000 on a desk. It is not done primarily for utility. And I think having those kind of expensive tastes, either for yourself or to impress others, either way is bad. Huge waste of money, not productive. In Atlas Shrugged, John Galt is offered a big pile of money near the end, and he says, what good will it do him? What can he buy with it? If he's going to buy anything with it, he would have to produce it first. He'd have to run the economy, get it produced, and then he'd get some of the stuff he just produced, but it wouldn't be able to buy anything else because there's nothing to buy that he wants. He already has the things he wants. In other words, I do not envy the luxuries of the rich. I don't think they're all that nice. And you hear a lot of stories about how the rich aren't actually happier. I think that's partly because all that money doesn't actually buy them very nice things. If the things were actually really all that awesome, then more money would to some extent bring happiness. Because having much better stuff would make you happier. It would make your life better. But money doesn't buy them happiness because the stuff they buy is not especially better than middle-class people have. Or at least have access to. There are middle-class people who buy low-quality things and make poor purchasing decisions. But if they were frugal and prudent and did reasonable product research, then middle-class people could have nice things. I don't think you should be ultra-minimalist, but I think clutter actually gets in your way and it makes your life subtly worse. It's harder to do things when there's clutter in the way in your home. I think the quiet quitting movement has some good points, that you should not do extra work and take on extra responsibility and pour your creativity into helping a company that does not respect you, does not pay you for extra work, will not treat you honorably, will just lay you off for no particular reason because their management are idiots who don't really plan ahead. Like, that could be why you got fired after you put in a bunch of extra work that no one bothered to notice or care about. So quiet quitting is about just doing the minimum without actually quitting. And that is just what you should do as your default at a job in general. Do the actual job description, don't do extra work without being paid extra. I'm semi-on strike like John Galt. I think that doing unique, creative, differentiated work that they couldn't easily get from someone else, which helps power structures or elites, is actually bad. That you shouldn't sell your unique brains, morality, integrity, creativity, etc., if you're actually really good at that stuff, to help society, meaning current power structures. I think you should avoid helping evil corporations like Google, Amazon, Coke, Nestle, Big Pharma, big banks, big oil. Tangentially, Alex Epstein gets accused of being a shill for big oil, and he thinks that's ridiculous. But he does in fact get paid by the industry. He has lots of access, and he never talks about how bad they are. He only says how good they are. He only says things they like to hear. He never says, oh, I know a ton of negative stories about them, let me share some. I will share both sides of this picture and give a complete picture with everything good and everything bad I know about them. He never researches and then shares results about what is wrong with those companies and what flaws they have. Maybe he's done a little of it somewhere, but like as far as major themes go, I am quite confident without even doing the research that big oil companies have huge flaws just like all other big companies in our society. And Alex Epstein never talks about that, so he kind of is a shill. And I think that what he's doing is actually really bad and dangerous in anti-objectivism because he has some brains that most of them don't have. He's actually providing some unique value to oil companies that they could not get elsewhere. He's telling them how to make certain arguments that they didn't know, how to present themselves as more moral than they even thought they were in their own opinion. And he has some good points to that. He's put some decent thinking into that. And then he's selling out to these bad people and helping them. And he thinks he's helping a good cause because energy itself is good. Electricity is good. Gasoline for our cars is good. I agree with that. Industrial society is definitely better than primitive society. Having energy to replace muscle power with machine power is a good thing. Manual labor sucks. So I agree with him on that. But I think helping the big oil companies when they're pretty damn evil and doing it in a very one-sided way is really bad. I don't think that they're particularly worse than other parts of our society. Like, probably big pharma and big banking are worse than big oil if I had to wager a guess without really looking into it. But I don't think that's much of a defense of big oil. So I think most people, it doesn't matter that much. They don't do work that's very special or creative or whatever. But Alex Epstein had enough merit that him helping current bad power structures is actually harmful. And that he ought to be more on strike, more like John Galt. He has enough virtues that it makes a difference. And using it in service of evil is evil. Some types of work are safer than others. So science is an example of something that's particularly dangerous. If you make scientific breakthroughs, the powers that be can use those for their agenda. The worst example, probably in general, is weapons research. If you help them build new weapons, they can use that to oppress people. And getting paid a lot of money does not solve this problem. If the people who made nuclear bombs had gotten paid millions of dollars each, which they weren't, and that's kind of lame. But even if they had been paid millions of dollars of each, it wouldn't really make much difference. It wouldn't solve the problem that now governments have nuclear weapons and governments cannot be trusted. On a related note, I used to just be in favor of nuclear power, but now I think governments are so irresponsible that nuclear power might be kind of unsafe, and maybe we shouldn't have it. I'm not sure. I think that a well-run nuclear plant is fine and safe enough, but that governments do not maintain power lines and infrastructure and roads very well, and cannot be trusted with nuclear plants, and cannot be trusted to regulate nuclear plants run by the same kinds of CEOs that run Facebook or Johnson & Johnson. Nuclear plants are only safe if the workers who run them have a significant amount of morality, of integrity, of work ethic, of being responsible, reasonable people who will be careful. And I'm not sure that our society, our government, our big companies can be trusted with that kind of thing, and to maintain that over time for decades, and for it to just be safe day after day after day. And I think it is bad that Alex Epstein has a large monetary incentive not to think that way, not to say that, not to come up with that idea, not to recognize that risk, not to listen if I told him about that idea. Anyway, so science, especially like hard sciences, can help current elites and people in power. And there's a significant risk there. But if you're doing some kind of science that doesn't matter much, or social sciences, then it's a lot less helpful to them. Social sciences is a bit more like my next example, art, which can help them with propaganda, but doesn't help them in very practical ways other than propaganda purposes. There's less of a danger of being an artist. There is a danger. I think artists do frequently propagandize in favor of the status quo, the establishment, the people in power, often without realizing it, and there are subtle incentives. Like they're trying to figure out how to sell work, and it turns out that pro-society work sells better than anti-society work. And sometimes they fool themselves, or they're like anti some like specific little bit of society, so they think it's like a counterculture thing. However, it also implicitly endorses some other part of society. So they think they're making like anti-society work and standing up to the man, but they're actually endorsing some other aspect of the man. Philosophy is an interesting case because it's potentially very powerful, kind of like science. But abstract philosophy is hard to use without actually learning a lot of stuff yourself. In other words, basically being a good person. It's hard for the bad people to actually learn and use abstract philosophy. The more you turn it into practical tips, then the more they might be able to use it. The more you break it down into like flowcharts, they might be able to use it and get value out of it. There's a danger there. And also, it can be used for propaganda. A lot of bad philosophers, definitely, along with other artists and intellectuals and stuff, are in the propaganda realm. Another example I wanted to talk about is a hairstylist, or just any kind of person working in fashion. Like say that you do hair or makeup or clothing for mainstream celebrities. Of course, if you do undifferentiated normal work, it doesn't particularly matter. Someone else could do the same thing. But suppose that you're really creative and you're passionate about your work and you do a really great job. And so you help these celebrities better dazzle the masses. They are more effective at looking really cool and impressing people. That helps with propaganda. It helps make them more effective as icons. Does that matter very much? Is that actually a thing you need to avoid, or is it not really a big deal because they're just promoting, I don't know, being pretty and being sexy, and they do some like TV ads for some consumerism stuff, and I don't know what else they do. Is that actually important and something you need to avoid, or is it not that big a deal? Whereas like helping them build new weapons would be really bad. It's hard to say. Like, I don't have a strong, clear line of delineation. I just think there are concerns here. Fortunately, I don't think you need to get really rich. So, the danger is that a lot of the ways of getting really rich would support existing power structures. It's not like you have to sacrifice getting rich in order to avoid supporting power structures, because you didn't need to be rich anyways. Also, most of you weren't going to end up rich even if you tried your very best to suck up to existing power structures. A few more thoughts on financial independence, which was part of the original question. So, money, ownership of things, passive income, other wealth are not safe over time. The government can confiscate it. They can inflate the currency. You can make the wrong investments. Stocks or bonds can crash. There are scams, fraud, phishing, theft. You can be the victim of a lawsuit, of a natural disaster, of medical bills. There are a lot of ways to lose your money, or have your plans for the future not work out how you wanted them to. Capability to earn is broadly safer, not entirely. It's a lot harder to be confiscated or inflated away, because if you do work in the future, you're going to get paid future market rates. If they inflate the currency a bunch, and then you do work after the inflation, you'll get paid wages that are going to buy you food at current market prices. I think it's bad to try to work really hard now in order to not need to work later. I think you shouldn't try to plan ahead quite that much. It's not safe, and you should try to have a nice life now. Don't sacrifice your life now. Work a reasonable amount now and also do some things you like, and then plan to work a reasonable amount later and do things you like, rather than trying to put all the work now and all the like fun or benefit or hobbies or whatever it is you care about later. Don't try to skew things and try to have the good things in the future. Try to have a good life now. Try to learn about rationality now if that's something you want to do. Fit it into your life today. Anyway, I'm not sure if I ever stated before that advertising tries to manipulate people into buying a bunch of junk they don't need, and that kind of consumerism and rat race stuff is bad, and I think you should opt out. My lifestyle, in many ways, looks more like a leftist anti-capitalist than some pro-capitalist, pro-business person, even though as far as economic theory goes, I agree with capitalism. Hi guys, I'm back the next day to add 2 more points. First of all, the government encourages consumerism. It's not just companies and advertising. It's also their Keynesianism and stimulus, stuff like that. The government thinks it's important that there is high consumer spending and an active economy and stuff like that. The government is not encouraging the capitalist approach of accumulating capital, of saving in order to have more capital accumulation in order to increase the productivity of labor. They actually have anti-savings policies, including intentional inflation. They have a goal rate for inflation. It's maybe 2% per year. Look it up if you actually care. So having an inflation rate on purpose discourages savings, encourages spending. Not a ton because it's reasonably small, but it is some incentive. And it is just one policy of many. Alright, and then point number 2 that I wanted to add was to talk about passive income, which is overrated. So there are a few errors people make about passive income. And there's also 2 comparisons I want to make. So the first one is passive income versus active income. This is the main point of it. And active income means income where basically you're trading time for money. You're working like a regular job, and you get paid for the work you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid in terms of time, but you have to keep doing new work to get new money. So passive income is nice because you just get money without having to do more work. You're not always stuck. Whenever you need money, you have to do more work. So there is a benefit to passive income. There's a reason people like the idea of it. However, the error here is people overestimate how passive a lot of income is. Most things they call passive income are partially passive income, or less active income, or easier income. So there's something positive to it, but it's not as extreme as they make it out. It'd be better to conceptualize it as lower effort income rather than passive income. So I'll give some examples. If you own a rental property, it takes work to find people to rent it, and to get their check every month, and then to bug them if they don't pay, and then to deal with repairs and maintenance and property taxes. All of those things are work. And if you outsource it, it's still work to find a management company and a repair guy and so on. That's less work, but you also get less passive income because you're outsourcing. You have to pay for a bunch of those services. And if you're a very small landlord, it can often cost a lot of your profit to pay for that stuff instead of doing it yourself. It's common for really small landlords to do those things themselves and not have the overhead of trying to deal with some rental management agency. So if you're trying to rent your spare room on Airbnb, that is more passive income than working at McDonald's, but it's not passive income. It takes effort. You're going to have to deal with stuff. It's going to be some work. So other examples include investments. These take some work. You have to decide what to invest in. You have to monitor your investments some. What if the market crashes? What if there's a lot of inflation? What if you have the wrong ratio of stocks to bonds? If you put absolutely no thought and effort into these things, things could go wrong. If you have a digital product, an ebook, that you sell, your sales will probably go down over time if you do nothing, if you do no additional marketing ever. So it's somewhat passive income, but if you don't keep up some level of marketing, it's probably going to decline. A lot of ebooks have to be updated every few years to stay relevant. The thing you're writing about changes in some way, and you have to keep your book up to date. There can be new trends or new scientific research that is relevant, or if it's software related, there can be software updates that you have to cover, new features and stuff. Okay, then there's another distinction related to passive income, which is passive income versus wealth or cash. So a lot of people think passive income is better than cash, and that is basically wrong. I think the conceptual idea is that it's like a renewable resource and you just keep getting cash infinitely into the future, which you usually don't actually. If you put no work in, passive income streams tend not to last forever. But even if hypothetically they did, it's still not better than cash. Cash can be used to buy passive income streams. You can buy a bond. You can put in a bank account that pays interest. You can buy stocks that pay dividends or grow. You can buy a small business with a passive income stream. Cash can be converted into income streams, and income streams can be converted into cash. You can sell a passive income stream. You can sell the rights to an ebook. You can sell a small business with a website that mostly runs itself. In general, cash is more liquid, more flexible. So if you had to pick one or the other, cash tends to be better, on average, in general. Income streams have a net present value of how much cash they're worth today. The reason is that money in the future is worth less than money today. So suppose, hypothetically, that the value of money went down every year into the future by 10%. So $100 today is worth around the same amount as getting $110 a year from today. And it's around the same amount as $121 2 years from today, and so on. So we have a discount rate of 10% per year of how much money is losing value. The real discount rate allegedly is lower, more like 3% or 5% or something. People debate what it actually is. Anyway, so if you have an income stream, a passive income stream of $100 per year, how much is that worth? Well, you can add it up. It is $100 this year is worth $100. And then next year, the $100 is worth $90 in today's money. Then the year after that, it's worth around $81 in today's money. And the year after that, it's worth around $72. And you can keep going year by year. And if you get to, say, 1,000,000 years in the future, it's going to be worth less than a penny in today's dollars. And you can either use math to compute the actual sum of this infinite series, or you can just say, you know what? I don't care about 1,000,000 years in the future getting less than a penny, so I'm just going to round the rest of it down to 0. And you just add up the value for the first 1,000,000 years, and then you just stop, and you find out that it is worth some amount of money today. which might be, say, $1 million. And so you would have this income stream is worth the same as a pile of cash with a certain size. $1 million is unrealistic for the value of $100 a year. It is way too high. Actual values on these things are more like times 25. Like if you're getting $100 per year of pure profit, that might be worth like $2,500 today. Just a very rough estimate. If you invest $2,500 today and you're getting a 1% return, that would be $25 per year. If you got a 4% return, that would be $100 per year. So if you could get a 4% return, it would give you that $100 per year and be equal to the $100 per year. So cash or wealth should be looked at as somewhat equivalent to passive income. A certain amount of passive income is worth a certain amount of cash. This comes up with the lottery. Lotteries are actually advertised in basically a fraudulent way. They say $100 million jackpot, and then you win the lottery, and they will not hand you a check for $100 million. Instead, what they do is they say, we'll give you payments over the next 30 years that total $100 million, or you can take a lump sum of $60 million today. The net present value of the payments is about the same as the lump sum, and so the real jackpot is $60 million, but it's advertised as $100 million. Those are just made up numbers. But that is my understanding of how a lot of lotteries work. Probably not all of them. So related to this, there's a common bias towards interest and dividends over growth stocks. Suppose that you had a stock that pays no dividends, you get no cash return from it, but it grew 2% every year, just reliably, consistently, which is not very realistic, but we'll just pretend it's an average or whatever. A lot of people would say, well, this gives me no income. I get no passive income from this growth stock, so what am I going to do with it? I would rather have a stock that pays 2% dividends every year but doesn't grow, or a bond that pays 2% interest every year but doesn't grow. However, these things are actually equal. You can convert either one into the other pretty trivially. If you have a stock that pays 2% dividends every year, you can turn it into a growth stock by reinvesting the dividends. Every year you buy 2% more of it using the dividend money. And you can do it in reverse. If it is a growth stock that grows 2% every year, then you sell 2% of it. And now you have a 2% dividend, effectively. And people get the math wrong. They think, well, if I sold 2% of it every year, then in 50 years I would have none left. That is incorrect. If it's growing at 2% per year, and you sell 2% per year, you're actually going to have the same amount in 50 years as you do now. You sold off the same amount that it grew by. The growth can counteract the sales. This is in terms of the value of the stock. So your number of shares will go down, although never to zero, but the value of those shares will stay constant, and we're ignoring inflation at the moment. If you want to look at things more accurately, you have to look at how much do they grow above inflation. So if inflation is 2% per year, then to make an actual 2% return, it has to grow 4% per year. 2% just to keep up with inflation, and then 2% more for your actual profit. So if you sell 2% per year, if you started with 100 shares, then after the first year, you'll have 98 shares. However, their value went up 2%, so you come out the same. And then after a bunch more years, the amount you sell will be less than 2 shares per year, because you're selling not 2% of the original shares, but 2% of the current shares. So when you get down to 50 shares and you sell 2%, you're only going to sell 1 share that year, not 2 shares. When you get down to 10 shares and you sell 2%, you're going to be selling 0.2 shares that year. So you'll never hit 0 shares. It would keep going down, but only over a very long time period, in which case the value of a single share would have gone way, way up, so it makes up for it. So you should not be biased towards dividend stocks or interest over growth stocks. It doesn't particularly matter. They're equally good, according to first principles or math. So the point about passive income, overall, is that it is overrated. It's generally not as passive as people really think it is. It's more work, more risk. It's not just, you got plenty of money forever, don't have to think about it anymore. There's generally some sort of risk or downside or ongoing work, some way things could go wrong. So it's nice. There are definitely advantages, but you should think of it as like better income or easier income or something compared to a job. But not just passive, automatic, risk-free, guaranteed, anything like that. And you should not be biased in favor of income streams over wealth, or interest and dividends over stock growth. Anything that raises your net worth is, to a first approximation, equally good. And income streams have a net present value. Okay, that's the end. Bye-bye.